Oh my gosh, you look so lovely. Hi, Claudia. So, this is Claudia Batten, and Claudia has an amazing background. It spans all sorts of places between being a lawyer, coming from New Zealand, moving to New York. I can give it all of the explanation, but maybe it's better for you to give like the 2 second background, and
Yeah,
then we'll start to talk a little bit about those big things that changed your life.
awesome. What a great thing to do on a Friday.
After a hike.
A lot better than email. So the snapshot of my journey is that I started life out as a corporate attorney in New Zealand, and it was something that I was good at. And I realized at a point, this isn't what I want my life to look like. Like all of this that I'm seeing is not where I see myself in the future. So I like to say I took a very big leap and I left law and I left New Zealand and I moved to New York, a place I'd never been in my life. I'd never
Mhm.
lived outside of my hometown. And I had no job. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I ended up being part of the founding team of a company called Massive. And
Mhm.
that was the first company that ever put advertising dynamically into video games. It was an incredible ride. We were one of the first digital media platforms. Learned a ton. We got acquired by Microsoft. I then worked for
For
Microsoft for
a
3
lot of money.
It was a big exit. It's
That's
certainly,
a big exit.
yeah, at the end of a lot of VC investment, I should capture there for
Okay.
the not so wise. And so that was an incredible exit, and really started to open a lot of doors for me that I've been part of that founding team, which was incredible and led to me ultimately leaving Microsoft, which was a really interesting experience. Did that for 3 years, left Microsoft, founded Victors and Spoils here in Boulder, Colorado. And we were the first advertising agency in the world to be based on crowdsourcing.
Hmm.
So we did that.
And
Yes.
how different was that than 99 Designs? Like these are major, major brands that you were working on.
Yeah, I mean, both with Massive. In fact, I took that learning from Massive and applied it to Victors and Spoils, is that if you want a game change, you have to bring along some of the big brands with you. So
Hmm.
you have to work with the likes of Coca-Cola and Harley Davidson and the like to, Diageo. You have to work with these companies for people to take these big shifts
Hmm.
seriously. And so huge amounts of, I could unpack that endlessly in terms of how you do that. But we worked for some very big brands, did some incredible work, and ended up being majority acquired by Havas in 2012. And I've now spent the last 2 years being a free agent, which has been incredible, and an exercise in mass opportunity creation, as it turns out.
Okay, and so I'm going to give you all sorts of questions, but I just have to promote you a little bit more. You know I love doing that. So tell us about, just quickly, Ice House, and then I know we're going to talk about broadly a little bit more
Yeah,
because specifically it's around leveraging network.
yeah.
But maybe like one or two other sentences about the squiggly line and how you don't have to have this straight and narrow career.
You don't have to have a
You can choose
plan,
passion.
people. Just
Exactly.
make it up as you go along.
Mhm.
It's been so shortly after exiting Victors and Spoils, realizing again that this was, I knew what this would look like post acquisition. It's what I call rinse and repeat. It's
Mhm.
fantastic. It's a great opportunity for a lot of people who thrive under those circumstances. But I'm a squiggler. I'm someone who goes with my instinct, goes with my gut, and finds opportunity and creates opportunity, and that's been my life. So as part of leaving, I opened myself up to work with any and all people that wanted help, mentoring them here in Boulder and New York and New Zealand and sometimes anywhere in the world, and just had this incredible experience of meeting and engaging with people, very much kind of opening up a new chapter in my squiggly path. And actually, I've just launched the website squigglylife.com, and it's got I'm in process of interviewing a whole lot of the amazing squigglers that I've met along the journey, unpacking the secrets of their success and following the non-linear path, and little tidbits and inspirations as you go along the journey, because the whole point of the squiggly line, it's kind of a Joseph Campbell-esque quest. It's difficult and it's challenging, and there are moments that are hard, and there are moments where you feel on very unstable ground because you don't know what's next. And so just to be able to know and be okay with the fact that you don't feel, you feel anxiety, you feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and to know that that's actually a good thing is what I'm trying to share. So I've been squiggling for the last couple of years, and as part of that, I tried to say yes to as many opportunities as I could. One of those was to go on the board of the Ice House in New Zealand, which is a business growth engine for New Zealand. We work with small to medium businesses and startups and help them scale and help them get to the next step in their journey, which is just being part of the NZ Inc. story. Helping New Zealand grow is something I'm extremely passionate about. It's a fabulous startup community, as is Boulder. So been doing a lot of stuff around that and have launched broadly along the way, because the big learning for me with all of this has been the importance of my networks. And not just my networks, and not that transactional, hey, I'm Claudia, take my business card, what can we do together? Like, that's not networking. What networking is creating these romances between people, where you have, like you and I do, where you have this like complete like love for somebody else and what they're doing, and want to enhance their life and move their life forward. And if you come to these relationships with the pure desire to help that other person, what comes back to you is just unbelievable.
Okay, so I have to jump in right there.
Yeah. Because I know you knew this.
I had this experience yesterday that was so exciting. So I met this woman, and she runs the column Women's Media on Forbes, and she's amazing. And she's doing this next thing, which is more inspirational. It's around business. And I have this other friend who has a company called Inspire Me Today. She's got something like 50 million. I think they have 15 million visits a month. It's an amazing amount. But anyway, they're completely aligned. Basically, she's doing what the other one's been doing for years. And it was one of those things where I was like, you guys have to know each other. And then yesterday they included me on the thread, and it's like they're doing 17 things. Like they listed out all the different things this one's going to be doing.
Because it's explosive. It's explosive.
It was so much fun for me.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, when you talk about leveraging your network, that's it's exponential to be able to bring the two together. And it's so much fun to see what happened with that.
So what happens is that there's a chemical reaction. So one of the co-founders of Broadly is a knowledge management expert, the amazing Mary Abraham. And she like unpacks all of this from this is science, people. Like, this is not like woo-woo kind of like feminine bullshit crap. I shouldn't say that. There's like a derogatory term. I take that back. But I've been so inspired by the Run Like a Girl video. If you haven't seen that, I'm like being really brutal about my language and calling other people up for it. But like, this is science. And what happens is when you do that, you have an oxytocin. I like to joke that it's Oxycontin, but it's not. An oxytocin hit in your body, which is like love. Like, you feel this just incredible, chemical reaction in your body that makes you feel good is fundamentally what's happening. So, I talk about this and I say, we learn and we feel like networking has to be so hard and transactional, and that we're putting ourselves out and it's awkward and we don't feel right. And we talk about leveraging our networks, and it sounds like such a dirty, usury kind of thing. And it's what we're talking about is what I like to say, the OMG, you have to meet each other email. When you connect people with that kind of a passion, that transfers through these two people you've just connected and allows them to have this like incredible relationship as a result from that. And the thing is, you go deep fast. It's this wonderful term. And immediately, like, the trust is there, which is the critical component for doing something new. The shared passion is there, and just you can run with things. And none of us have time anymore, right? Like, we don't have time to cultivate these like long-term relationships that take years. I mean, we're trying to do stuff and the world is changing really fast. So we need the OMG, you have to meet emails. Like, that's, I think that's going to carry us forward. I know, and I know you get this. I'm like,
I mean, this is like my biggest thing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about leverage and these different pieces, but when it really comes down to it, leverage it's all about relationships, and catapulting your business or your life really depends on how it's the people that you interact with. And that whole ability to not just connect with you, but to know, wow, like, this is a puzzle. I know that these people come together, and that trust that you're talking about it's so much quicker to get there because I came recommended, or, you know what I mean? It's like, if Claudia says this person is amazing, 100%, I need to talk to them. I don't even have to like think about it. I know they're amazing.
And that's, hiring on that basis is also so powerful. So that's where what we're doing with Broadly, we're like, you don't want you don't want to put a Craigslist ad up. I want Nicole to tell me who the best person is to hire for this position, or Mary, or whoever, someone I radically trust. I want them to say, oh, this is the person for you. And, this has happened on a number of levels for me personally, and a number of levels for people I work with, when they're like, there was this young girl who's like, I've got a British passport. I can work anywhere in the UK. I'm obsessed with fashion. Like, how do I do this? And I'm like, well, one of the girls I mentor was at Tommy Hilfiger in Amsterdam, and she's now at Burberry. Talk to her. And now Alice is over in Amsterdam working for Tommy Hilfiger. I mean, it's like, and quickly. And I've said to them, look, she's a firecracker. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is somebody that you should talk to. Like, that's what we all want that. Like, this isn't even a new thing. This is what we've always wanted. We're just in a place now with digital media. We're in a place now with digital connectivity that we can actually start to take this to another level beyond what I say, that very linear, kind of categorized, transactional way that we've done this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say when I speak to people, and this might be something that's innate or maybe unconscious, as you're saying that, my head, I'm present with you. And I'm thinking of, oh, you need to know this person. And okay, she's doing the fashion thing. Okay, my client in New York.
Your brain's going. You can feel it happening.
And I think that's really where you create value for people. I mean, there's a ton of ways that you can do that, but there's so much to bring to. I mean, I have a client right now, and they're doing a big partnership. I'm not going to say with who, but they have a very engaged audience. Well, they were able to bring in probably 2 of the larger finance companies as well. And now they have a partnership that they're building with this other company. And it's like the 3 of them are so much bigger than the one, and they're supporting each other. So it's like it crosses, it gives everybody the ability to have a much bigger presence and much more impact.
Yeah.
And it's for everyone. Everybody's really happy because they get to do stuff.
Well, especially if you come into it with the right motivation and intention. And I think that's the gut check that I have to do, because there are, Adam Grant wrote this great book.
Because of you, I had to read it.
And he talks about there are people who are transactional. And for those of us who are givers, and that's all we want to do, we have to be a little bit conscious with that. But I think most of the people we have that, like, OMG, you have to meet feeling about, are typically givers. I think we instantly, actually, I think about it, the cogs going, and you thinking about all the people you should connect with because you're present with that person, like the beautiful mind, when the whole equation comes up and that brain is like, that's how I feel like it is. And I think naturally only the people who are non-transactional, the people who are givers, are the people who are entering my field with that stuff. But there are people who are transactional, and they're happy to get to the top standing on other people, which is good on them, go for it. But I'm not interested in operating that way.
And if you read Adam's book, research shows that the people that give most, those are the salespeople. And you're right, it's not just flat out giving, but the transactional of, I gave you this much, I want this much back. I mean, so he breaks that down. I think that book is really impressive. I want to take you into these questions because I know you and I can talk forever. Quick question before you go in there, because this has been coming up with some other people. How do you feel about the cold introduction versus me coming to you and saying, Claudia, I have this perfect person for you. What do you think? Do you want to meet? I've heard different people say that they're not up for the cold. Like when I say the cold, meaning I write to you and I say, Claudia, you have to meet Amy. Enjoy, whatever it is. And the 2 of you go on. I know people have a lot of stuff on their plate. And
that's the bigger question, right? I mean, and I'm sure you have the same thing. It's just like the number of people who I want to talk with, who want to talk with me, who want to do stuff. I'm just like, I do not have enough hours in my life to do all of the in detail, like gorgeous things that I could do. But, I'm just going to keep saying yes. I feel like if your instinct is that I should meet so-and-so, whether it's to help them, I'm in for that, because I think we can get very careful about managing our time, but my personal belief is that I need to be as open and as giving and just very careful to surround myself with the positive energy people that I can. And that's been great for me, and it's worked really, really well. So,
Mm-hmm.
I would say I've got one friend who could introduce me to anyone and it wouldn't bother me at all, but she still checks in with me. So she still does the cold question and then the intro. And I've never said no. So, but she still asks. And I think there maybe are some people that you should be careful about. So I did the other day ask a friend, hey, can I introduce you to this person? Because they'd previously been at conflicting companies, and I didn't want to create any kind of conflict for her. If she was in a non-compete situation, and had information that I wasn't aware of, I thought I needed to tread carefully there. So I think be smart about it, but I don't have a problem with it generally.
Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you on be open to yes, because yes
Yes.
usually leads me where I wasn't even thinking I needed to be.
Yes.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
okay, now this is where we have to go into your life. And
Yes.
so I want to talk a little bit when we talk about leverage, and we are both of the mind that leverage really is about relationships. I would love to hear one or two of the stories where some connection, some relationship catapulted your business or it changed the trajectory of your life. And you've had all these twists and turns. What were the pieces that made that happen? Like, how did you get to Boulder?
Yeah. Yeah, so well, Boulder was divine intervention. I purely came here for a workshop, a weekend retreat thing, and met my now husband. So that is a magical story in and of itself, and
A
more to do,
relationship.
more to do with the divine and the magical things in life, than any any form of leverage of a relationship. I think it's really interesting because, again, I think leverage is such a cold, harsh word for what we're talking about. And really, the secret to my success has been cultivating trusting relationships with people and being loyal. And so most everyone I work with, if not everyone, knows that I have, an honor code that I work by, that I'm not there to rip them off or to do harm by them. That if that happens, I'm going to, for some unintended reason, I will go to the ends of the earth to make that up to them. I had a great example of a client who didn't quite get what they want with one of the businesses that I worked with. It was out of my control. And now, he's like, anytime he needs something, he knows he can call me because I got someone on his board for him. I've flown out and done a strategy day with him. I'm like, we're mates and I owe you, and it didn't work out exactly right. So I'll keep doing right by you. And when you create those relationships, there's any level of where they can go to. I have this wonderful guy who, when we're part of Massive, he was a client of ours who's working with Atari. We connected through that. We really liked each other we just had these great conversations. And he subsequently moved around and around to Nokia, and now he's at Microsoft. And at every single company I've been at, we've had conversations because we just enjoy doing things together. And he knows that I'm always trying to be on the edge. I'm always trying to find the new. He knows that I'll be a little out there on the edge, but that I'll be careful. We had a conversation recently about I'd worked at Microsoft, and I'd gone through the transition, and so we had conversations about that. And so the depth of a relationship, you can't know that when you go into it. So if you're transactional and you only live in the moment about it, and you're just very like, I'm going to take what I can from this person now, you're kind of ignoring where their journey is going to go and where they may end, and the fun that you can have with them. I mean, there's any level that could come from that.
I like what you're saying. It's almost like future proofing your life. It's like you're choosing
the people I want to partner with long term,
or you're choosing to completely limit the possibility of what could be if you're just thinking about, okay, we're doing this right now.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing about that is, like, there are people who I've worked with at Massive and then Victors and Spoils, and they're now basically like, well, if you're doing something, I'm in. Like, they're like, I trust that you're going to do right by me. I trust that you've got my best interest at heart, because you've proved that multiple times. And can I invest? Can I be a client? Like, I'm talking to someone right now who's at like one of those A grade, you want that client on your website of people you're working with. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out this thing with squiggly line and I've got this crazy idea. And he's like, let's talk about that. Like, I mean, that stuff doesn't happen if you don't, over the long term, cultivate these relationships.
So let me ask you this, because not everybody just falls into these conversations that like this serendipity. So
Yes.
let's say you do want to, there's somebody, they're super high profile, they're a client that you want to have, you want to be able to get in front of this person. What would you suggest? Are there things in terms of messaging? Are there ways to be present at the right place or for them? If there's anyone that was cold that you really wanted to get in front of, was there something that you did to make that happen?
Look, I think there's the secret to that is that you need the OMG, you have to meet intro. And sometimes there's a couple of things. Sometimes you might have to be patient about the timing to meet that person. So the first thing I would say is if there is a list of people that you really want to meet, for whatever reason, you should write them down and know about them and just be conscious of them and keep on top of them. And I just, without going too crazy out there, I really do believe in the power of manifesting these things and of just creating this consciousness around them because, it's pretty logical. I always like to think of these things that we think are woo-woo kind of, universe, whatever things. But the reality is there's usually a really good science or practical reason for why these things happen. Because if you're thinking, I really want to meet Wendy Clark from Coca-Cola, I really want to meet Wendy Clark from Coca-Cola, you're going to start noticing who she knows. It's like, oh, I didn't realize so-and-so was good friends with her. Well, maybe at some point I could ask for an introduction. And that's what I think is important. I think when there's two critical things for me. The first is, I'm very wary about people who go on clinically thinking, I have to meet with so-and-so for business. Because every time I've gone about something that way, it's fallen so flat. It's uncomfortable. You might link in with them and then get in touch with them, but it doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. Whereas if somebody introduces you to that person and says, you're going to love Claudia, this is what she's done, da-da-da-da-da, we talked about this before. Yeah. There's this instant kind of, I'm listening.
Well, and you're also, you're in a different space because at this point in your career, your network is insane, right? Like who you get to be able to connect with is a whole other. So for people that are just starting out, there's this concept of social selling. So the idea that cold calling, all that kind of stuff is over and done with, where you actually start to become a champion of these people. So, there is a timeline. It's almost like you can't just imagine that you're just going to go out and get to that person. But like you're saying, be conscious of what it is that they're doing. Be, up on it. If they're tweeting something you think is amazing, retweet. If they're just become their absolute advocate and champion. And then over time, you're almost building a relationship that way.
I think that is brilliant. And I think it really works. And here's the thing, you don't want to be a stalker. So you want to be really careful about that. And I also think you shouldn't be I think the point I'm trying to make is don't be too categoric about who you have to meet. Mm-hmm. I think that you need to know what objective you're trying to achieve. And by focusing on the objective, you will meet the right client. Whether it's Wendy Clark or Coca-Cola, I've connected with certain people thinking that they're going to deliver me business, and they're like, I don't make these decisions. Mm-hmm. So I've put all of this work into it. I've got this great connection, and I'm there in front of them, and they're like, I'm really into it, but that's so-and-so. And you're like, oh, well, that was not necessarily a dead end, but it feels awkward and transactional. Whereas I think if you're objective based, and that you start to work your network for that. So the first thing I would say is get mentors. If you're not at a certain level, even me, I've got a great network and I can mostly connect with the folks that I want to, but I actively collect mentors and I actively mentor.
There's always something that I want to know next that I need support on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually those really deep relationships and then meeting people who you just really connect with too. And you can do this at any level. Mm-hmm. I think it's when you try and I think they talk about this with social climbing as well. You can't jump, you can't jump levels. You can't be an intern and think that I'm going to go meet with Bill Gates. You can't. I'm just going to go cold call Sergey and Larry. Like that's just delusional. But what you can do, and what I've done, is cultivate people where I'm at. And then aspirationally try to bring people in and invite them into my world by saying, I really appreciate that you've done X, Y, and Z, and this is something I want to learn. And will you be an active mentor for me? And people come to me for that too. And that's the people that I mentor are people who have cultivated themselves into my world one way or another, either through people I know, or I had the social. I have this one woman who is so incredibly helpful to me. And she definitely asked for my advice a number of times. But then when I'm like, what do you think about this? What do you think's going on here? She just gives me endless amounts of information. She retweets me. She does this. She does that. And it's smart. It's very give. You need to be giving. You need to not be focusing on taking. How can I get X out of this person?
That's right. I talk about selling is all about serving. It's not about selling in any way.
No.
So, all right, I want to hear about Broadly, because this is, this entire conversation is basically what Broadly is about. Yes. So tell us about your new endeavor.
Yes, so Broadly's been a big part of the adventure, and I'm finding now that the things that I want to kind of birth into the world are things that are just like, part of my DNA now. They're like so me, and Squiggly Line is that way, and so is Broadly. And so Broadly came about from a sequence of events since prior to selling Victors and Spoils, actually, where I started to realize this the power of the OMG you have to meet, XYZ. And I started to see this. And the best example I have of it is that one of my mentors, who's this incredible woman, Jane Diplock, she's just done all these like phenomenal things. She was the head of the Securities Commission in New Zealand. She's chairwoman of the International Securities, just delightful, big brain, very feminine, just, incredible person. And she connected me with Pamela Reichman, who's the author of Stiletto Network. Oh. And Stiletto Network is a book that talks about the power, the absolute power that comes from giving, and from coming in and creating a circle of friends where your pure motivation is to help them in life. And I read the book and felt, honored that she gave me a manuscript, read that, fell in love with that, had a first conversation with her that was supposed to be 30 minutes. I think we went to 2 hours easily, and we've become just connected, bonded for life. And it came from Jane saying, I just think you guys have to meet. Pamela's writing this book. She'd love some help with her digital strategy. But beyond that, I just think you should know each other. And so all of these pieces started to come together, and I realized that LinkedIn stalking people, aspirationally or good intended as it may be, is a very old school way of doing things. And my feeling was, and in fact, Mary Abraham, one of the co-founders, and the other one's Alessandra Lariu from She Says, actually, which is all about the power of connectivity. So she was a co-founder of She Says. Mary and I were on a panel and we got asked a question. I get this whole digital connectivity thing. You've explained it really well. I get the power of it, but how can we use this force for something better than just, connecting? And Mary and I just looked at each other and said, there's definitely some charity stuff going online, but there's a really important question underneath that. Let's keep talking about it. And we did. And at one point I said, I just feel we should bring Ali into this conversation. I just really feel that she's the right. So very intuitively, the three of us came together and just felt that most digital connectivity was very old school. Like, you're connected, so what? Sure. What are you doing with that? And we realized on top of that, the power of connecting around people's missions, as we called it at the time. We've changed that language now to ask, which we resisted. When I say it without being careful, it sounds like ass. So I have to be very careful about the K with my accent. But, our point was, we're networking because we're trying to achieve things, which is why I said you've got to be clear about your objective rather than the specific person you think is going to solve that. So who better to ask for help around that than the people who want the best for us, the people who would open any door. Yeah, and that we call that our inspireds, or our trusted network. And so we thought, well, what if you could, pass the information in LinkedIn, determine who your inspireds were, your trusted network was, push the other people, not to the side, but just into other categories, which is what we encourage you to do. And then put out asks, put out missions onto Broadly so that that trusted network can see what you need help with and say, oh, you're trying to do this. Oh, you should talk to Pamela. Oh, you should talk to Nicole. Oh, you should talk to Claudia.
Because that's the hardest thing is you go to LinkedIn and I mean, I might have a ton of people I know, but then it's like, I can't even remember who does what. It's hard. You know what I mean? It's hard. And then I might be connected to them, but I don't know that this person knows the publisher that I need to get in touch with.
Yes. And that's the big one there. So the thing I say is that when you're, and I've been playing with this really fun company called B-Side, and we were trying to create a case for your iPhone that had an embedded screen in it, so that you could have a second screen for your iPhone. And great, cool idea. There was a lot of fun advertising pieces I wanted to do with it. Very, very hard to get launched, and ultimately we put it to the side, even though it has the best name in the world. And as part of that, I have no electrical engineering experience. I have no manufacturing experience. And I was like, how do I connect with these people? And so I'd go into LinkedIn and I'd try and figure that out, and I'd maybe email a few people that I thought had electrical engineering experience, and I was just dead ending. And anyone I met with, they were helpful. They were certainly helpful, but they weren't OMG, you have to meet helpful.
Right.
And so what I started to think is like, what I need to do is ask people who are in that trusted network. I need to ask them and just know that randomly one of them is going to have a brother or a sister who's like an absolute expert in this arena. Like, that's the better contact I need. Like, better I ask a random group of people and they're like, oh, my sister-in-law is totally and it's phenomenal how often that is the case. It's phenomenal how often your friend who's like off in this other industry, who would think you knew nothing about the medical profession whatsoever, their sister happens to be one of the top people at the Mayo Clinic. Time and time and time again, I've found that is the case. So that's really what we believe the future of networking holds, is that we create these cultivated, trusted networks, and we get help from them and in turn help others. So the whole point of Broadly is that you need to build what we call your impact score, which is your score that indicates how much you're helping other people solve their own problems. And if your network score is low, aka you might be a taker, you're not going to get the same profile on the site that other people do who are helping. So it really starts to promote what we call the new networking.
So you've created a digital gift society.
I
love
to help you move forward the things that you're most excited about, most passionate about, and need help with.
That you just wouldn't be able to get that kind of response without having to ask every single person, are you my mother?
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Could you be the one? Could you be the one?
That's exactly. I use that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And just, it's cold. It's really cold to do it that way. And it doesn't, even if you get in front of the right person, the connectivity is not as strong. It's just not. And so they don't give you the A grade.
Yeah. So right now, Broadly it's an iPhone app.
Yeah, so
are you still beta, or are you?
We're still very much beta. So I have a friend who's he's like, he was a chef and he then studied psychology. So he's like this phenomenal brain, and he's a leadership coach, and the way his brain works is just fascinating. And so I reached out to him recently about a few things that are going on with me, and he said, he's like, I really like your integrative thinking, because I said, all of my businesses, I'm just appreciating the squiggly line that they are, the squiggly path that they're kind of pursuing. Like, I can really see the beauty of that, and it allows me to help people a lot more and kind of coach them on how to create successful companies, because every one of my companies right now is uber squiggly. And they are. I mean, it's the reality of them. They go on their own path, and it's for you to problem solve all of the backwards and sideways, all of the brick walls. And so Broadly, the reason I went down that kind of supposed wrong track in this conversation is or digression, as I probably should have said, is that I'm realizing that with Broadly that we're still trying to figure it out. Like, we have this great idea, we have this great app, we had a great development team, they got busy on something else, so they're off pursuing that, and we're left without a development.
The life of a startup.
The life of a startup. So it's very squiggly. And so we're super beta, and the unfortunate bit is that we're only iPhone 5. So, we'd love.
And I really need you to be on the Nokia Lumia.
I know you do.
I need you on Windows 8. If you could just do that for me, please.
Exactly. I need to. We're going to
put on the list of things to do.
We belovedly call our beta broadly Frankenstein. It does work. It's not as bad as a Frankenstein, but what we want to do is really figure out the features with a small group, and then we can start expanding it to the other platforms. So, we're in process on that, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the journey goes.
Well, I cannot wait. I cannot wait, because this is absolutely what's needed. Yeah. So let me take you into some questions, and I'd just like to hear you speak a little bit to this whole conversation about women in technology and how we have to change the ratio. There are so few women that are focused on STEM, and I know that this is a conversation that is kind of prevalent, and that's what's happening. But the conversations that I'm having more and more with my network is that that's not necessarily the case. That it's more a conversation about integration and how are we bringing male and female principles to the table. So a lot of like what we were just discussing, when I say male and female, male being more outward directed, not necessarily aggressive or anything, but it's outward. And female energy is more, it's inclusive. It's not just the collaboration piece, but there's an element of trust, of patience, and the great thing that I keep seeing is that even the male-led companies, especially these younger entrepreneurs, they're so willing and open. Like, I don't think they think that there's any other way of leading or being than to have this kind of integrated approach. I've heard it called centered leadership. I'm not sure how best to describe it, but I'm curious, as a woman who led a technology company, did you lead differently? And I'll let you start with that question.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's super interesting. And I think the first point that we have to acknowledge is that we need to support STEM in our kids, full stop. And I don't care if that's boys or girls. That we need to encourage a new form of education, a much more flexible, change-oriented, less kind of, I have to pack all of this information in my head, more I need to know how to find that information and apply that information. So I think that we should focus at a very elemental level with how we're teaching and coaching. I like to say our future rock stars, male and female. So that would be the first point, and I'm actively pursuing that myself. One of the companies I'm involved in is supportive of the development of children. I've actually just gone on the board of a not-for-profit that's supporting the development of creativity in children and digital learning and creativity in children, which I'm really excited about. And I'm actively going into schools and speaking to try and tell them about. Yeah, it's so exciting. So that's my first line of defense, offense on this problem. That's how I choose to focus, and it's so fun. I mean, that's just like so fun. So then the second piece for me is that the point you're talking to, and actually it's interesting. So Ali Lariou did a TEDx talk on this, on the feminine values. And the issue that we've been having, or the issue that we're creating, is that we're talking about our language around these things are binary. We say male and female, we say masculine and feminine. Exactly. And the problem is it becomes naturally exclusive. And I really appreciate that we need to change the ratio, but I think there's a bigger point around diversity of thought than necessarily get more women involved. Now, I really respect and am so thankful that there are people out there saying this, because it needs to be said. And there are panels that you go to and they're all male, and you're like, that's retarded. Like, that's so wrong. I'm not supposed to use that word either. That's so wrong, and shouldn't be happening. Yeah. And so that's necessary, and I'm so thankful that those people are going out on a limb and saying that. But the bigger issue is that there are a lot of guys with very feminine values and very feminine ways of thinking, and that doesn't mean that they're feminine in any way, shape, or form. Right. It means that they have collaboration, cooperation, transparency, authenticity, those are their values. And so I'd love to get a new language going on this.
Yeah.
I'd love to find a new way to talk about it, because I think that's what's needed. What we need is an evolution away from this very dog eat dog. I must, kill something to win for myself. I must conquer, like all of this old language that's given us the financial crisis, that's given us the issues with Enron, that's created these issues over and over again. That needs to be behind us. There needs to be a new way to go forward, and diversity, I think, needs to be at the forefront of that.
I've been trying to come up with a phrase for that forever. Ever.
I don't know what it is. Maybe you should talk with Allie. Maybe I should do an OMG, you two have to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to ask you as well. I mean, I believe that technology is going to power the rise of women. And when I say that, I mean, there's no way to actually argue with the power, the speed, and the scale of technology. So when you have more and more women leading technology companies and coming from a place of authenticity, men as well, but I feel like that is going to, once more wealth is in the hands of women, I believe and hope and trust that we're going to educate the rest of the masses. And when that happens, it's going to be a big deal. When I say that, I mean, all these women that we don't have, that don't yet have the ability to get to experience the life that we get to, I think once more women have more of the wealth, that's going to happen differently. So I'm trying to think, like, if I want to take you into that, or maybe I want to ask you more around two things. What technology do you love that you think is being created well for women? And the other one, what would you like to see created?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, just to kind of close out a little bit of what you were just talking about,
please.
I feel that, again, it's more about diversity than it is about it's more about equal representation, so that we can find a new world order that's going to deal or head face on with some of the issues that we're grappling with. We have significant issues as a society, not just in the US, but internationally. And so that's why I'm a proponent of diversity of thought. I want to see every different kind of group represented. I've just started joining a number of boards, and you go into these very male oriented boards, and I don't care. I like guys. I really enjoy the way they think. They've got great experience. I have no issue with that whatsoever, but they think a certain way. And so if a guy can be on a board who thinks from a different perspective, that's the important piece. It doesn't have to be a female. I want to see youth on boards. I want to see different sexual biases on boards. I want to see different races on boards. That's what I want to see, because I believe fundamentally, not that that's right from an equality standpoint, though, that's an important.
It's just diversity of thought.
For me, it makes for the best creativity. It makes for the best problem solving, and it's the kind of stuff that's going to take us forward as a society. And let's just acknowledge for a minute that the dog eat dog stuff that we've been working on it's not going to serve us long term. So when I start to think about technology, I start to look for things that I think are taking us forward to a new place. I'm not really, my lens is not like, oh, this is good for women. My lens is this taking us forward. And I was just watching, you probably saw it, just a wonderful interview by Khosla, and interviewing Sergey and Larry, and talking about a bunch of the, what Google's doing, but also what Google X is doing, and just the concept of the driverless car, and what that could mean for transportation, and what that could mean for consumerism and consumption, and what that could mean for people with disabilities. And even I'm the biggest jerk about Google Glass, because I just think it looks stupid, but you see, they'll fix that for sure. It's great technology. But glass hole for a reason. You just can't look like an idiot.
Oh, can I please start using that? I'll source you.
Oh, it's not me. Glass hole is like,
I don't think I've ever heard that. I mean, I haven't.
It's a meme, baby. But when you see people putting Google Glass on who are disabled,
yes,
and suddenly the way the world shifts for them, I'm like, that's just, to me, I get so excited about our future when I see things like that. yes, we've got to be very careful. There's some potential negatives, and we want to be mindful of that. We don't want to just give up all of our rights and freedoms as consumers just because there's some fancy technology. But it's those things that are moving us forward as a human race. And that's why I get excited about Broadly, because we're really trying to find a new way to create connectivity between people that's not just like, I want to meet you, I want to clamber up the social ladder or the corporate ladder. Like we want to, that's where Broadly comes from. And then some of these education things that I'm working on, the power of us to utilize children's innate desire to be on screens and to find ways of educating them to be better human beings and have them have fun along the way is just and expose their natural creativity and help them learn creativity. It's that stuff that gets me excited.
It's so inspirational and so much fun.
Yeah, it's
so much fun.
So fun, and it's so important. And these kids are crying out for it. They're desperate. We've got this, not to get on the education bandwagon, it's not my expertise, but we've got this old system and we're trying to figure out what the new system should be. Is it a Khan Academy type thing? Is it a flipped classroom? What is it? But just being part of that dialogue, that's creating our future rock stars. That's creating, I go in and I say the founder of Oculus, celebrated his 21st birthday just before Facebook bought it. Like, you guys, you should be thinking about this stuff now. Like, Absolutely. There's no reason why you can't create that. And you see their mind going when you tell them that. And that's what excites me in terms of technology in the future, a lot more than being female focused. And there's plenty of amazing women out there doing that job. I just don't feel like I'm
That's a fantastic answer.
I'm supportive, but yeah.
Fantastic answer. And I think I almost cried. I'm not kidding. I'm like tearing up when you're talking about getting to support these kids. Like, how much fun, like, one, to be in any kind of role where you're actually teaching, but then to have that just like boundless creativity that hasn't yet been conditioned to think that it's not enough.
Yeah.
Any of those limiting beliefs have yet to be ingrained, and everything is a possibility. It's incredible. That would be like the best possible think tank ever.
Yeah.
Ever. So I want to ask you, we're almost done, but I want to ask you, like, are there certain secret weapons that you have? Meaning, are there any apps, what is it that you use that you cannot live without that everybody else needs to know about?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think that the problem that I have is, and it's a learning that I've made for myself, is that I'm not a schedule person, and I like to change things up all the time. Mm-hmm. So I have to say that it's a little hard for me to answer because I'm such a with everything in my life, I like to say I eat from the smorgasbord of life, from the buffet of life, so it's like I have a little bit of a hard time just going this. But I will say that any form of Skype, Google Hangout, or Zoom that we're on today, I couldn't live without. But most people have got the memo on that. I think texting is the best thing in the world. Because I won't. My people joke about the fact that I don't answer the phone. Like, I find it so interruptive.
Right? I mean, I don't answer the phone either, but I like to call people. I think it's just exhausting to text.
Oh no, I like to call people. I like to talk, but I don't like it to interrupt my day or theirs.
Yeah, I don't like to pick up. I like to call.
Oh. Well, I don't even notice my phone ringing, but a text is like I can really quickly communicate with someone and get something going. And that's not to say that my friends don't just pick up and call me, but mostly I'm kind of crap at answering the phone. So whether that's helpful or not, I find it's very, I process a lot of email. I work with a lot of people. My days are pretty loaded. And I just think that anything that's interruptive, I even have a problem with Google Chat because it just bings at you, and so it's
notifications, anything like that.
I learned very early on to turn all of those things off. So I look at the phone in a similar way. And then the one system that I was taught, and it's going to be a little hard to really talk you through it, but anything that helps me organize a massive to-do list. So I don't believe that necessarily my daily to-do list is like that. That'll be paper, or it'll be
Everywhere. I've tried so many different
yeah,
things.
but,
So
but
many.
the system that I enjoy is actually tracking the everything in like an Excel document, or Trello is the new one that I've
I've
started
used
using.
Trello, but it's still, there's limitations and
Really?
everything.
So I just old school Excel document, and I have a system where for every business I'm working on, I have 5 categories of things. So it could be fundraising, developing product, marketing, engagement. It could be whatever the 5 things are that I think are the most critical focus for the business from a big category standpoint. And then under each one of those, all of the things that I need to do, detail against that. And then I have the step rank for each of them that prioritizes them. So I can organize them based on specific item. I can assign them to people so I know who's tracking it.
Yeah, Trello's good for that.
Yeah, Trello can work for that. I also know Basecamp can be helpful for that, but just the old school Excel, and then now putting that in a Google Doc. I'm a big Google Doc fan.
So I want to ask you just another second about that. So do you also do something similar like each week? Because I find that there's so many other things that will fall under those different categories, but
Yeah, so the theory of it is you should be reviewing it daily, making sure you know what's going on, making sure the categories are right, and then bubbling up from that your daily list. Um, I think the reality is with these things, there's some amazing tools out there. Trello is one. AnyDo, I love AnyDo.
what is it?
Any.do. It's like a little to-do list. Any.do. It's a to-do list. They've done a really nice job with the UI and a really nice job with the language that they use. It's fun. And it's just a very cool digital to-do list that'll be, it's on any device. So I'm a huge fan of that. All of these things are out there, and I just think you have to I think that the secret is put thoughtfulness into how you need to arrange those things for yourself.
Commit to one instead of like, you have to have like the one place where things land.
Yeah.
And that's I'm still finding that one.
Yeah, and I think that the other one I'd put out there too, there's a great system that Linda Jenkinson, who's a friend of mine and very successful entrepreneur and incredible human being, she taught me this networking tool where you for every person that you meet against a specific objective, you ask that person, who are 2 people that you think that I should meet, and could you introduce me? And then track that in an Excel spreadsheet so that you have the person, the 2 people that introduced you, and you then, if any one of those introduced, so you can trace them back. And then you need to keep in contact with the people who originally suggested them so that you're creating this feedback loop. But then every additional person that you meet, you say the same thing. Could you introduce me to 2 people that you think can help me with this? And she said the secret of it is A, you've got to reach out to the people who you're introduced to, but B, you have to circle back with the original person and keep them. So I've got a little bit of a weird system that I'm using to keep track of that, and just being really mindful about the people you've met. I realized that I was meeting so many people, I was losing track of who was who, and I wasn't following up. And so I'm trying to be a lot more systematic about that now, just because it's not conscious to meet people and then just like drop them. And I'm aware that I've done that, so I'm trying to repeat it.
At some point, I mean, you can even visually see what happens. At some point, it's a lot to
Huge
maintain. It's a
So
gosh, you and I, we could talk about the whole connection piece and how to stay in a relationship for a very long time. But that's a really beneficial. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed hearing that piece as well. I'm writing down, this is what I need to know. Okay, so last question.
Yes.
It's our turn. What is it that we can do for you? I'm a big fan of things being interactive and engaging. So if there's any kind of ask that you have, tell us, and then we'll have answers below.
Well, I love that. I would really appreciate anyone with an iPhone 5 downloading Broadly and getting in there and playing with it. And I'll also add to that, because I think this is a way I can give. If you connect with me on LinkedIn first, and then go in and download Broadly, that we'll be able to be in connectivity through Broadly, and hopefully I will be able to see your asks come through, and feel free to message me on LinkedIn if it's not working immediately for you. But we are in beta, and we would love to encourage people who get this whole idea about helping other people in order to help yourself, be in service. We'd love to encourage people like that to come and be part of this network. And if you would like us to come and talk with any of your groups about the theories behind Broadly, we've got folks in New York and me in Boulder, and then we're often traveling. So we're also really happy to come in and do real life, we call it analog Broadly, and come do it in the real world, and help show you really what we're trying to do and where we're going to go with that. So
I actually had an experience with that because we had you come speak at the She Says Boulder event.
Yes.
And it was probably, everyone has said, that was really one of our best events, because everyone in the room got to engage with everyone else and see how they could support them. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and it went really well, and it felt great, and that's what we're finding. We have this whole thing of like, people don't leave the Broadly events. Like no one, like we always go overtime. I think we went overtime at that one. We did one at a friend's house in New York, and I was like, we have to go now. Like we're in her home, and it's like way past when I said we'd be out. But that's, this is the cool thing about this. This is where people get really engaged with what we're doing with Broadly, is because it's not transactional, because you are having this wonderful chemical release. It feels good. This just feels good, and not awkward. And I think it's especially intuitive to women, or to people who, you know, are very who have a very big presence of the feminine values in them. And there are a lot of guys who are really connected with Broadly because of that too. Again, we need to relanguage this, but I'm not sure how that's
Absolutely. Well, I'm so thankful that you had an opportunity to make yourself available, given that you are constantly on a plane or somewhere. Constantly. So I do appreciate you being here and being with me. And when we see each other next, we're probably going to have to do it on the mountain.
I think so. Either that or with a bottle of rosé.
Oh, now you're drinking, huh? Last I saw you, we were cleansing.
This is true. There's times to cleanse and times.
Well, you can't do everything. You have to have a little fun.
Yeah, bit of both.
You do both.
Awesome.
All right, my dear. Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye to you. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.